Maria Santos had been hemming pants and fixing torn jackets for 23 years in the same cramped tailor shop on 5th Street. Customers came and went, dropping off expensive suits with barely a glance at the quiet woman behind the sewing machine. But when a young Marine brought in his dress blues for alteration, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Hidden beneath a pile of fabric scraps, partially covered by an old measuring tape, was a military badge unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Welcome to Real Heroes Stories YouTube. Before we continue this powerful story of hidden service and silent heroism, tell me in the comments, from which city in the world are you watching this video today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. These stories matter. The bell above the door chimed with the same tired sound it had made for decades, announcing another customer who probably wouldn't bother to learn her name. Maria looked up from the wedding dress she was altering, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose, and saw a young man in civilian clothes holding a garment bag. "Can I help you?" she asked in her soft voice, the same words she'd spoken thousands of times before. The young man stepped forward, and there was something different about the way he carried himself. His posture was straight, his movements precise, and his eyes swept the room in a way that suggested training rather than curiosity. "Yes, ma'am. I need some alterations on my dress blues. I have a ceremony next week, and the jacket needs to be taken in at the waist." Maria nodded, setting aside her current work. Military customers were always polite, always respectful, though they rarely stayed long enough for conversation. She gestured toward the small changing area in the back. "You can hang it there, and I'll take measurements." As the young Marine, she could tell now from his bearing and the way he spoke, unzipped the garment bag, Maria prepared her measuring tape and pins. The dress blue jacket was immaculate, the kind of care that spoke of pride and tradition. She had altered military uniforms before, though not often in this neighborhood. "How long have you been stationed here?" she asked, making conversation as she examined the jacket's fit. "About 6 months, ma'am. I'm Corporal Martinez. This is my first time wearing dress blues for an official ceremony." There was nervousness in his voice, the kind that came with wanting everything to be perfect. Maria understood that feeling. She had spent her entire career making sure things were perfect for other people, ensuring that their clothes fit exactly right, that their special occasions went smoothly. "What's the ceremony for?" she asked, marking areas that needed adjustment with her white chalk. "Marine Corps birthday celebration. I'm part of the Honor Guard this year." Pride colored his words, and Maria smiled. She had seen that look before, though it had been many years since she'd been around military ceremonies. The attention to detail, the desire to honor something bigger than oneself, she remembered what that felt like. As she worked, Corporal Martinez looked around the small shop. It was cluttered in the way that working spaces often are, with bolts of fabric stacked against walls, mannequins displaying half-finished alterations, and sewing supplies organized in systems that only made sense to their owner. The walls were covered with photographs of satisfied customers wearing clothes Maria had altered or repaired, but nothing that suggested any personal military history. "Have you been doing this long?" he asked. 23 years in this shop," Maria replied, adjusting the jacket's shoulders. "My father taught me to sew when I was 8 years old, said it was a skill that would always be useful." Corporal Martinez nodded, understanding the value of practical skills. As Maria continued her measurements, he noticed something that seemed out of place among the civilian clothing and wedding dresses. In the corner, partially covered by a bolt of dark fabric, was what looked like military gear. Not modern equipment, but older items that seemed to have been carefully preserved. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any military background?" I noticed some gear over there. Maria's hands paused for just a moment on the measuring tape. It was a question she hadn't been asked in years, and she wasn't sure how to answer it anymore. Family history, she said carefully. Sometimes people leave things behind, or they bring items that need special care. It was true, but not the whole truth. Corporal Martinez sensed there was more to the story, but he respected the privacy of the elderly woman who was taking such care with his uniform. Military or not, she understood the importance of getting the details right. As Maria worked, she found herself remembering things she usually kept buried. The way fabric felt different when you were stitching under pressure. The importance of repairs that had to hold under extreme conditions. The particular weight of gear that carried more than just practical value. This should be ready by Friday, she said, finishing her markings. Will that work for your ceremony? Yes, ma'am. That's perfect. What do I owe you? Maria quoted her standard price, which was less than what most tailors in the city would charge. Corporal Martinez paid without question, understanding good value when he saw it. Thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate this. As he prepared to leave, Maria felt an unexpected urge to say something more, to acknowledge the shared understanding of service that seemed to hang in the air between them. But she had spent too many years keeping her past private, and the words wouldn't come. After he left, Maria returned to her work, but her concentration was broken. The conversation had stirred memories she usually kept locked away, images and experiences that belonged to a different version of herself. She tried to focus on the wedding dress, but her hands moved automatically while her mind wandered to places she rarely allowed it to go. 3 days later, Corporal Martinez returned to pick up his uniform. The alterations were perfect, as Maria's work always was, and the dress blues fit him with the precision that military ceremonies demanded. This is excellent work, ma'am. Thank you. As he prepared to pay, Maria excused herself to get his receipt from the back room. It was then, while she was gone, that Corporal Martinez's training kicked in. Something had been bothering him since his first visit, a sense that things in the shop weren't quite what they seemed. His eyes were drawn again to the corner where he'd noticed the older military items. Now, with Maria temporarily absent, he could see more clearly what was there. Among the bolts of fabric and sewing supplies, partially hidden but not completely concealed, was a collection of items that didn't belong in a civilian tailor shop. There was a tactical vest, well worn but carefully maintained, a pair of military boots that had seen serious use, and tucked between 2 rolls of black fabric, catching the light from the shop's overhead fluorescent, was something that made Corporal Martinez's breath catch in his throat. It was a military badge, but not just any badge. The design was distinctive, instantly recognizable to anyone with military training. It was a Marine Scout sniper badge, the kind earned through months of intensive training and proven performance under the most demanding conditions. But this wasn't just any sniper badge. As Corporal Martinez looked closer, he could see additional markings, indicators of advanced qualifications that spoke of capabilities far beyond basic marksmanship. This was the badge of someone who had operated at the highest levels of military precision, someone whose skills had been tested in conditions that most people couldn't imagine. Maria returned with his receipt, and Corporal Martinez straightened quickly, his mind racing with questions he wasn't sure he should ask. The quiet woman behind the counter, who had spent the last few days carefully altering his uniform, suddenly seemed like someone entirely different. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I couldn't help but notice some items in the corner. That badge, does it belong to someone in your family?" Maria followed his gaze, and her expression changed subtly. For a moment, the careful neutrality she maintained with customers slipped, replaced by something harder, more focused. It was the look of someone calculating risks and making decisions based on information others couldn't see. "That depends," she said quietly. "On who's asking?" The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Corporal Martinez realized he was standing at the edge of a conversation that could go in very different directions, depending on how he proceeded. "I'm asking as someone who recognizes what I'm looking at," he said, his voice respectful but direct. "And someone who understands what it means." Maria studied his face, weighing something in her mind. After a long moment, she walked to the corner and carefully extracted the badge from its hiding place among the fabric. She held it in her palm, and the metal seemed to catch and reflect not just the shop's lighting, but years of memories. "Marine Scout Sniper," she said simply. "Graduated 1989. The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that changed everything. Corporal Martinez stared at the woman in front of him, trying to reconcile the quiet Tailor with the image of a Marine Scout sniper, one of the most elite and demanding military specialties. "Ma'am, I had no idea. When did you serve?" Maria set the badge down on the counter between them, her movements deliberate and precise. 12 years. I enlisted when I was 19, fresh out of high school. Made it through Scout Sniper School on my second try." "Second try?" "They didn't think I had what it took the first time. Too small, they said. Too quiet." A slight smile crossed her face. Turned out being small and quiet were exactly what they needed. Corporal Martinez felt like he was seeing Maria for the first time. The careful movements, the attention to detail, the way she had examined his uniform with such precision. It all made sense now. She hadn't just been altering his jacket. She had been applying the same standards of perfection that had made her successful in one of the military's most demanding roles. "Where did you serve?" he asked. "Somalia, Bosnia. Early operations you probably won't find in textbooks." She listed the deployments like entries in a log book, without emotion, but with the weight of experience. Enough confirmed actions to matter. Several commendations I'm not supposed to discuss. The numbers were delivered matter-of-factly, but Corporal Martinez understood their significance. Those missions meant precision under pressure, life and death decisions, operations where her skills had meant the difference between success and failure. "Why did you leave the service?" Maria was quiet for a long moment, and Corporal Martinez wondered if he had asked too much. But then she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of decisions made long ago. "My father got sick. Someone needed to take care of him, and I was all he had. So I came home, took over his tailor shop, and put away my rifle." "Did you miss it? The military?" Another pause, longer this time. "Every day," she said finally. "But family comes first. Always." Corporal Martinez nodded, understanding the sacrifice in a way that only someone with military experience could. He had seen other service members make similar choices, trading their military careers for family obligations, carrying the weight of that decision for the rest of their lives. "Ma'am, can I ask why you keep this hidden? Why not display it? You've earned the right to be proud of your service." Maria picked up the badge again, turning it over in her hands. "Because that's not who I am anymore. That was someone else, someone I used to be. The Marine is part of me, but this is who I chose to become." But even as she said it, Corporal Martinez could see that wasn't entirely true. The precision, the attention to detail, the quiet confidence, all of it came from the same place. She hadn't left her military training behind. She had simply found a different way to apply it. "With respect, ma'am, I don't think you stopped being a Marine when you became a tailor. I think you just found a different way to serve." Maria looked up at him, surprised by the observation. "How do you mean?" "You've been taking care of people for 23 years. making sure their clothes fit right for their important moments. Wedding dresses, graduation suits, military uniforms like mine. That's still service, just in a different uniform. The words seemed to resonate with something Maria had never quite articulated for herself. She had spent so many years thinking of her tailoring as a step down from her military service, a compromise forced by circumstances. But maybe Corporal Martinez was right. Maybe service took many forms. "I never thought of it that way," she admitted. "My grandmother always said that how you do anything is how you do everything. The same standards you applied as a sniper, you're applying here. The same attention to detail, the same commitment to excellence, just different tools." Maria looked around her shop with new eyes, seeing it not as a retreat from her former life, but as a continuation of it. The wedding dresses that had to be perfect for the most important day of someone's life. The business suits that helped people feel confident in job interviews. The military uniforms that carried the weight of tradition and honor. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I hadn't seen it that way before." Corporal Martinez picked up his altered uniform, now understanding why the work had been so precise, why every detail had been attended to with such care. It wasn't just the skill of an experienced tailor, it was the precision of a Marine who understood that details mattered, that excellence was a standard worth maintaining regardless of the context. "Ma'am, would you mind if I told some of the other Marines about your shop? We could use a tailor who understands the importance of getting uniforms right." Maria considered the offer. For 23 years, she had kept her military past separate from her civilian life. But maybe it was time to let the two worlds meet, to acknowledge that they had never really been separate at all. "I'd be honored," she said. As Corporal Martinez prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Ma'am, one more thing. Thank you for your service, both then and now." After he left, Maria stood alone in her shop, holding the sniper badge she had kept hidden for so many years. The afternoon light coming through the front window caught the metal and cast small reflections on the walls, like signals in a forgotten code. She thought about the conversation, about the young Marine's words, about the idea that service could take many forms. For the first time in decades, she felt proud of both versions of herself, the Marine who had served with distinction in distant places, and the tailor who had served her community with quiet dedication. That evening, Maria made a decision. She took the badge to her workstation and carefully cleaned it until it shone like new. Then she placed it in a small frame and hung it on the wall behind the counter. Visible, but not ostentatious. A quiet acknowledgement of who she had been and who she remained. When the shop opened the next morning, the badge caught the early sunlight and cast a small, bright reflection across the room. It was a signal, Maria realized, not just of her past, but of her willingness to let the two parts of her life finally come together. The bell above the door chimed, announcing the first customer of the day. Maria looked up from her sewing machine, her hands steady and sure, ready to serve in the way she always had, with precision, dedication, and quiet pride. And for the first time in 23 years, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Some heroes don't announce themselves with fanfare or demand recognition. They work quietly, serve faithfully, and move through life carrying skills and experiences that most of us can't imagine. Maria Santos spent decades hiding her past, believing that her military service and civilian life were separate chapters. But sometimes it takes someone else to help us see that all our chapters are part of the same story. The greatest acts of service often happen in silence, in the small moments when someone applies extraordinary skill to ordinary tasks, when they choose excellence not for recognition, but because it's who they are. Maria's story reminds us that the person altering your clothes, serving your coffee, or teaching your children might have lived experiences that would leave you speechless. So I ask you now, have you ever discovered something unexpected about someone you thought you knew? Tell us in the comments about the hidden heroes in your life, the quiet professionals whose past surprised you, whose service you never knew existed. Thank you for watching Real Heroes Stories YT. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it with others. We're here to honor the stories that don't make headlines, the heroes who don't seek spotlights, and the service that continues long after the uniform comes off. We'll see you in the next story, and until then, remember, some of the most extraordinary people are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows how to look.